Just 1 year ago, Mohamed Morsy was starting his first term as Egypt's first freely elected president. Just before he took office, he told me that he would be president for all Egyptians.
I see it being called the presidency of the Muslim Brotherhood, but it is the presidency of Egypt. The president of Egypt in the next period will be chosen and elected by Egyptians. So if they pick the head of the Freedom and Justice Party, he will represent all Egyptians.
But he didn't. He was lambasted as catering just to Islamists. Mohamed Morsy remains locked up in an unknown location, detained by the military who toppled him last Wednesday. Although the country's caretaker foreign minister told me on this program that Morsy is being treated very well, the events of the past week have plunged Egypt into crisis. The country today is more divided than ever. Just take a look at Cairo tonight. These are live pictures. On the right there, thousands of pro-Morsy supporters are once again demonstrating in the streets. On the left, Tahrir Square, which is the gathering place of the opposition, is mostly empty. Again, the caretaker foreign minister told me the new government wants to include the Muslim Brotherhood.
As for the Muslim Brotherhood, what I'm sure of is that there is stretched hand to them to join. And of course, it is up to them to accept that. But there is a keenness within the leadership here to have as much consensus as possible.
But to the Brotherhood, it doesn't look much like an outstretched hand. Today, authorities issued an arrest warrant for the group's leader, Mohamed Badi, accusing him of inciting violence. The media, which is now firmly enthralled to the state, has taken to calling the Brotherhood terrorists. Their television stations have been silenced. Add to that this week's killings of more than 50 Brotherhood backers and the group's call for continued protest against Morsy's toppling, and you have a very volatile brew. Tonight, we get the perspective from the Muslim Brotherhood. Ahmed Darag is a senior member of the group's political wing, the Freedom and Justice Party. He joins me now by phone from Cairo. Mr. Darag, thank you for joining me. Can you tell me your reaction to the arrest warrant for Mohamed Badi, and has he been taken into custody?
Well, actually, this is not a strange thing to happen. I mean, actually, the whole country has been seized. The whole country has been arrested through a military coup. The legitimate president was ousted. The constitution was suspended. The parliament was dissolved. So there is no wonder, I mean, that anybody can be arrested or was issued against anybody. And this is quite expected.
So, Mr. Darag, the accusation is that he's been inciting violence, and that has certainly been a complaint by many in the opposition, including the military-backed rulers, that the Brotherhood has been inciting violence and continues to do so. What is your response to that, given the fact that there is this constant call for, quote, uprising in the street against what's happened?
First of all, the calls for uprising in the streets are not related just to the Muslim Brotherhood. The issue is not just the Brotherhood or President Morsi any longer. The issue is now whether the Egyptian people will allow their democracy to be taken away from them, the revolution dismantled. The millions you see in the streets now are not all supporters of President Morsi or of the Brotherhood. Many of them actually are opponents to the president, but they are quite surprised that all of a sudden the democracy they've been working on for a long time, that they thought that that is going to be, that the end result with that would be very near with the elections of a parliament after having a constitution, after having an elected president. And all of a sudden, they find out that they are back to square -1, actually.
Well,
so
let me ask you, I want to ask you about the transition roadmap that's been put forward by the interim government. But first, beyond that, I just want to get it straight to ask whether your group is calling for any kind of violent protest. And I'll tell you why, because signs have been seen saying martyr in the making, martyrdom or legitimacy. We won't leave until Morsi returns, otherwise we'll die as martyrs. Just be very clear about what you are asking your supporters to do.
Actually, the Brotherhood has never been violent. the peaceful demonstrations in the streets are not violent. And as a matter of fact, the opponents of President Morsi and the movement that took place on the 30th of June actually was doing exactly the same thing that the supporters of democracy are doing right now. How can you call this thing proponing violence? I mean, this is demonstrations in the street and sit-ins until the legitimacy is returned can never be considered violence. Mm-hmm. And the killings that took place a couple of years ago actually were targeted against civilians who were praying at dawn time without any arms. Their backs were to the military, and they were shot at. So who's proponing violence? I mean, if people are protesting in the streets, this is exactly the rights that we have acquired after the revolution. So who is proposing violence? The Muslim Brotherhood is never proponing violence. All the speeches, including that by Dr. Mohamed Morsy a few days back, if you recall, it was very clear that he was saying that we are going to retain our peaceful approach until we achieve what we are looking for, which is the regain of democracy. Where is the violence in that?
Well, let me ask you then about regaining democracy. Obviously, everyone around the world looking in, including here in the United States, wants to see a return to democracy and civilian rule as soon as possible. You heard the caretaker foreign minister, Mr. Mohammed Kamal Amr, say that there is a stretched hand, an outstretched hand to the Muslim Brotherhood. The interim leaders want you back into the political process. Is there anything that they can do or say now to bring you back into the political process?
They have to bring us back from prison first before bringing us to the political scene. I mean, the leaders, all the leaders, the legitimate leaders, including the president himself, is in jail. The chairman of our party is in jail, and many other prominent leaders are imprisoned right now with very funny charges. So, I mean, how can anybody get back into a political process, taking all this into account? I mean, there has to be some sense in what is being said. The Minister of Foreign Affairs actually has been a minister all the time. President Morsi was president, and he was doing a good job cooperating with the president. And all of a sudden, he realized that we are not living in a democracy and that the army had to interfere in order to regain democracy. This is absolutely astonishing for me. I mean, we've been colleagues in the cabinet. I was Minister of International Cooperation. We've been colleagues, we've been cooperating, and he never cited anything related to the absence of democracy or anything like that. If he didn't like it then, why didn't he resign?
Well, he did, actually.
Now he's saying that...
You know, he did during the big protests. He did resign, but that's not the point about what he did or he didn't do. I'm trying to figure out what the Freedom and Justice Party, what the Muslim Brotherhood are doing now. What are you talking about? What is your strategy? How do you recover from where you are now, or do you just stay in the streets?
Again, I want to stress the point that it is not just the Freedom and Justice Party. It is not just the Brotherhood. It is a big section of the Egyptian people who do not like what happened, who do not like a military leader coming out, removing a president, dissolving a parliament, suspending the constitution. This is, by all democratic standards, illegitimate. And that's why you have a lot of people now in the streets who do not belong to the Muslim Brotherhood, or do not even support it, or do not even support the President Morsi, but they are supporting democracy. And the only way to regain democracy peacefully is to remain in the streets demonstrating, peacefully expressing opinion. And this is exactly what happened last week, and the military made use of that to say that they had to change the president based on the will of the people. Now we have also millions of people in the streets protesting and demanding legitimacy. I mean, okay. This is very clear in my mind.
Mr. Darag, you know, this is obviously a seminal moment in your country, and what you choose to do is going to determine how democracy is going to be put back together again. But you know, President Morsi, before he was deposed on the eve of the toppling, admitted that he had made mistakes. And clearly, mistakes were made. Anybody looking in can see that there was just too much of a rush to accumulate power. There was too much of a siding with just one group, and it was very clear that it was an increasingly Islamist presidency with increasingly Islamist, laws and other such things being pursued, and very questionable people being appointed to various positions. Can you see that mistakes were made? And when you talk, you're an 80-year-old group. When you talk amongst yourselves, what is your strategy for coming back from that time?
Well, actually, the president acknowledged that mistakes were made, but he did not actually acknowledge mistakes that what you are saying. He said there are mistakes, and nobody is without mistakes. I mean, if any president or a leader committed mistakes within 1 year of his term and he's ousted through a military coup, we will have the world in chaos. And it is very courageous to admit that there were mistakes. I mean, we are all humans. We all make mistakes. But the mistakes he was talking about are not really related to the full acquisition of power or all that. If we did, as a matter of fact, what happened during last week proved 100% that there was no power actually in the hands of the president. I mean, he did not have any tools. He did not have any support within the state, within the officials, and that's why it was very easy to manage that coup. If the allegations that are being cited that he controlled every bit of the state, that coup wouldn't have been easy to succeed. But mistakes are related to other things, and this is natural. So tell me which president does not make mistakes? President Obama definitely made mistakes. Does this allow the army to go and out him and bring his opponent to power? This is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, It's not related to mistakes. It's nonsense, in my opinion.
All right, Mr. Darag, thank you for joining me, and we continue to try to report this very volatile situation from all sides. And of course, last night we had our lengthy interview with the caretaker foreign minister, who represents the interim government. Tonight, of course, you've just heard from the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohamed Darag.